Hey, football fans, this is Gary Greene, longtime professional sports bettor and handicapper in Las Vegas for the past 35 years. And this is going to be your week number 10 in the NFL, week number 11 in college football. Letdown, lookaheads, bad sandwich games, and even some wild trends as well. So, quick little video just to get you up to date on some good stuff. I will start off with the letdown spots. I call them the red flags when you're looking ahead possibly right past this week's game to a much bigger game next week. And we'll start right off with Philadelphia hosting Washington on Thursday night. So very quick turnaround game. And now this week, Philadelphia playing Dallas, a depleted Dallas team, no quarterback, Dak Prescott, lots of injuries, very easily probably going to look past this game because next week's game, for all intents and purposes, is going to be a big one for first place in the NFC East. Then you have Pittsburgh, who will be playing Washington this week in a very tough game for both teams. But Pittsburgh has a gigantic game next week against Baltimore, their hated rival. That's their biggest game of the year. At one point, they played like a bazillion games in a row. Everyone was decided by 3 points or less. This is a major rivalry game next week. Pittsburgh has a little edge as far as being well rested because they're coming off a bye week. But that's always a very big game that you want to be wary of when Pittsburgh or Baltimore plays the week before that. Now, Baltimore had a tough game tonight, and they pulled out with a victory, but it was a wild game that they very easily could have lost. The other two games are basically Kansas City is at Buffalo next week. So you have Buffalo this week taking on Indy. And again, their number one nemesis is the Kansas City Chiefs. That's the team that's knocked them out of a chance to go to a couple Super Bowls. So they had this game circled all year long. You know, Indy right now is a decent team, I guess you could say. But as far as Buffalo is concerned, this would be a very shaky, scary situation taking Buffalo on Sunday against the Indianapolis team that has nothing to lose. Rotten sandwich spots. Again, I just told you about Pittsburgh at Washington because Pittsburgh has got a shot to have to play Baltimore next week. We know that, but Washington kind of in the same boat because Washington has this as a sandwich game. They're coming off a rivalry game against the New York Giants division game, and then this Pittsburgh game, and then they have the Eagles next week. So again, there's always an opportunity where these guys, this game is big for the Washington Commanders, no doubt about it. But next week's game for a lot of teams is a lot bigger, so you have to be a little careful of that. The one situation here for tired legs, I do a video on that a lot, but tired legs team of the week is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for two reasons. Tough situation here. They're going to host the San Francisco 49ers, who are off, so they're coming in well rested, and they'll even have McCaffrey back at running back. But for Tampa Bay, they have a game here against San Francisco that's very physical, and they're coming off a Monday night game, overtime game. So not really a good spot for Tampa Bay, especially when they lost to come in a little bit down as well. In the college ranks, there's really only one bad look at spot, which is very light for this week. Not a lot of big marquee games in college football this week, but Tennessee, 24.5-point favorites as they host Mississippi State. But Tennessee has Georgia on deck. So a lot of people would say to me, well, if this Tennessee ends up winning, maybe by 10 points or something, they say, well, how can that be? Why couldn't they kill the Mississippi State? They're a terrible team. And the reason would be is they're looking ahead and they're not going to show anything too much. And if they can pull their starters a little bit early in hopes to resting them and not being tired out, because next week's game is the Big Daddy game of the year for Tennessee. So be careful there. Really flat, bad spot for a team, and I do this every week, and every week it comes through, but Iowa State was undefeated, and they lose a crushing game last week on a field goal on the last play, and that bad situation is they had just scored to take the lead for a beautiful comeback to look like they were going to stay undefeated, and then they gave up a field goal, a couple of big plays, and a field goal in the final seconds. So very tough to get back up for that, and they're going to be playing a Kansas team that's looking for revenge, and Iowa State, the line right is telling you basically at -3 only against a Kansas team that has underachieved all year long. be very careful of that spot with Iowa State. I want to tell everybody, if you email me to GaryGreenWins@gmail.com, and Greene has an E, you can see it in the background here on that green plate, GaryGreenWins@gmail.com. If you email me, put in the header free play 11/9, which is Saturday, I will give you a free play. I'll email you back a free play that I like on Saturday. Couple of big revenge spots. Last year, Alabama beat LSU 42-28. LSU in that game had 478 total yards. They lost by 2 touchdowns. And one of the big trends is LSU and their head coach Kelly at night is basically like undefeated, something like 15-0. Crazy stat. Another big revenge, Miami of Florida, the Hurricanes, undefeated, one of the few left, 9-0. They lost a heartbreaker last year, 23-20, but it was because their head coach is a moron, and he could have knelt on the ball and ran out the game, but of course he didn't do it, and they ended up losing to the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. This will be a game that they've been waiting for all year long. Indiana, they lost 52-7 to Michigan last year. They had 4 turnovers. Indiana is undefeated. Michigan is not that good. Michigan's out of everything now. This is a big-time revenge for Indiana, as they've been getting clobbered by Michigan a lot in the past years. Ole Miss last year lost to Georgia 52-17. They got their clocks cleaned. This is a pretty good Mississippi team. This is going to be their toughest matchup of the year, no doubt about it. But Georgia's not been playing well, and their quarterback's not been playing well. But last year, Ole Miss on defense allowed 611 total yards. The defense for Ole Miss is much better this year. I would expect a much, much better defensive effort on Saturday. And then the last one is Navy. They lost last year to South Florida 24-11, and Navy's coming off a loss where they're just turned the ball over like a bakery. It's a turnover city against Notre Dame. So they'll be coming back to hopefully probably try to avenge that loss. So that might be a value play there. A couple of wild trends. We'll finish this video real quick off. Indiana's 9-0, straight up 9-0 against the spread this year. South Carolina, 15-0 straight up versus Vanderbilt. The last 15 times they've played them, 8-1 against the spread the last 9 years. Vandy is ranked coming into this game for the first time since 2013. South Carolina could be a letdown because they're off a gigantic win over Texas A&M, where the crowd was just unbelievable. So we've seen some unbelievable crowds in college football once again this year, and home field with these crowds does make a difference. BYU is at Utah. What's so wild about this game is in the summertime, places like the Circa that put early big matchups up, the line was Utah -21. It's now BYU -3. Utah's off 4 straight upset losses as a favorite. Last but not least, Kansas and their head coach, Leopold. This guy has really done a good job. It's a tough place to be a head coach, Kansas. 15 wins, 2 losses, and 1 push against the spread versus teams with 700 or better percentage winning records. So he's been able to really get his teams up and knock off, not just cover, but knock off some of them. And this is a spot really where he's coming in a good situation because, again, I mentioned it earlier, Iowa State off the first loss. And when you lose that bubble burst game the next week, wow, that's a tough spot to get up for. So that's pretty much it for this college and NFL little segment here. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and hopefully you can make a few dollars off of the information I gave you, or at least be more informed before you make any weekend bets. Make sure that you never bet what you can't afford to lose, and you've been listening to Gary Greene Wins videos. Have a great weekend, everybody.